So, welcome everybody. My name is Benjamin Landorf. I'm the product manager for the SUSE Customer Center. And I'm going to present to you today the SUSE Customer Center roadmap. Before we get into the roadmap itself, a little overview of what we're going to talk about today. First, there are some introductions in order. Then I'm going to talk a bit or give you an overview of the functionality, at least the most basic parts of the SUSE Customer Center. Then we're going to look back roughly 18 months. What happened in the SUSE Customer Center, what changed, some major things there. And I'm going to give you an outlook of roughly the same time frame, 12 to 18 months of what's to be expected in the SUSE Customer Center. And of course, at the end, we're going to have a little question and answer session. Speaking of which, if you have questions, just raise your hand, ask right away. I'll try to answer on the spot. So that being said, I think we can get started. So first off, I have to tell you the story of how this introduction section ended up in the presentation, because I didn't initially plan on it. You might be aware that we're hiring a lot of new people recently, and it happened more than once now that I had roughly the following conversation. So, what are you doing at SUSE? And I told him, yeah, I'm the product manager for SUSE Customer Center. That information starts to be digested. And then we talk about, what's next? So SUSECON's up. Are you going to SUSECON? Yeah, I'm going to go to SUSECON, and I'm going to give a talk. What about SUSE Customer Center roadmap? And they go like, what do you mean, SUSE Customer Center roadmap? SUSE Customer Center is not a product. Why is there a roadmap? You're the product manager. Why are you the product manager for SUSE Customer Center? And my answer is always the same. Yeah, this is a good question. Actually, that's an excellent question, and that doesn't mean that ironically, and that reminded me of how I started out with the SUSE Customer Center, going back there, and I realized it's pretty uncommon for Customer Center to have product manager to be treated like a product, and basically it also means we're building our own Customer Center, and for basically any other organization, that would be pretty insane to do, a waste of money, because you can just go out, buy one out of the box, maybe paint it green, and have your SUSE Customer Center, and then just have to operate it. So why are we building our own SUSE Customer Center? Why are we doing this? So that's the basic question, and in answering the question, I have to go a bit into how SUSE does business. What's the value that SUSE adds for customers? How do we deliver that? So this is a question that goes a bit beyond SUSE Customer Center, and that's why I like this question quite a lot. So let's get right to that. So what do we do at SUSE? So we develop enterprise-grade operating system and software-defined infrastructure using open source projects. So you can see a couple of 100,000 or more projects out there, and we go create products based on that by picking the stuff, adding it together, contributing back into the space, into the community. And there are a couple of keywords here that will become important later on. So the one is we develop, both we implement, but also we have a vision for these projects and drive them forward. And we do enterprise-grade operating system, SDI. And we use the open source projects. All these keywords here are important because we do not address end customers. We look at the consumers. We look at enterprise-grade requirements and try to fulfill those. And of course, we're using open source projects. So we pick stuff that is freely available. So what does SUSE do? How does SUSE add value to this? Because you could just go out and pick all the stuff yourself, compile it, come up with something. What's the value that we add? So first of all, we make sure whatever we put together as a product is consistent in itself, so all the dependencies resolve correctly. We make sure it's secure. We give you a choice, so we let you install packages or not. For example, we make that easy, so you don't have to resolve all the dependencies yourself, make sure you're on the latest version of whatever, and we support you. So if there's a problem with, you suspect whatever application you're running on top of that, the product we deliver, we help you with any issues that might arise. So in short, we make the complexity that is inherent in running software-defined infrastructure or the operating system. We make that manageable, or we manage it for you even. And the key part here is, and that's where the enterprise aspect comes into play, we do this throughout the life cycle. So we don't do this once and create something that you can install, but we make sure that all these things we add are available to you throughout the life cycle, that you're always on the latest secure version, that all this is kept consistent, and it's easy to use and supported. To give you an example of how this looks then in real life, for SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 12 SP2 on x86-64, which had a lifetime of roughly 1.5 years, there were a total of 771 patches that we supplied. If you look at the potential combinations of patches that you could install, and you could of course go deeper because a patch usually consists of a couple of things, you come up with a number with 232 zeros. So that's quite a lot of potential combinations that we support. And of course we manage that kind of complexity for you by resolving all the dependencies and making sure everything works together. And yeah. That's otherwise we would be afraid to use. Of course. So you could, if you rolled your own, well, of course, you would have to make sure you're also GPL compliant. I agree. Yeah. So we make sure that's also covered. That's true. As a result, the update repository has 19 gigabytes. Which is, if you compare it to the install DVD, roughly 4 to 5 times the size. So the real value we add is not in the ISOs. So you could say the ISOs we provide, the install media, are side effects of us keeping the system secure, consistent, easy to use over the life cycle. So at certain points of time, we just take slices of that and make it more available as service packs, basically. But the real added value is in this dynamic aspect, providing all these patches. So what do we sell? How do we make money? As you noticed, everything is GPL, so we don't sell any licenses. We provide the licenses, but we don't take money for that. So what we really make money with is maintenance and support subscriptions, so that's the bulk. And something that becomes increasingly important, consulting services. So that's our business model. We don't sell you a piece of software that you install once, and but we make sure that you continuously get the updates and the benefits. So how do we provide all this to our customers for all the products that SUSE offers? And the simple answer, the short answer is through the SUSE Customer Center. So we make sure that you get this and you get your updates immediately when they become available. So that's the simple answer. If we look a bit deeper into the architecture, and that's the simplified version. So then the SUSE Customer Center is a bit more complex than you might imagine. And when I drew this, I actually initially missed the part that most people think the SUSE Customer Center actually is, and that's up here, the web UI. That's what most people see of the SUSE Center customer, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, really. So what we really have underneath, and it goes actually down into each of the products that we sell, is we have these various client versions, 11, 12, and 15, and these have the complete update stack. For 11, it was SUSE Register, Super Just. For 12, it's SUSE Connect, Super and Just. And well, the common thing here that really is part of the SUSE Customer Center is the SUSE Connect, basically. So that's our bridgehead, basically, into the client side. And everything in between, all these protocols here, the proxies that allow you to register once and download or mirror all the repositories you might need locally. All these are also part of the SUSE Customer Center, so we also provide you with SMT, RMT. As you can see here, there are some, well, we made sure, for example, that SMT12 is forwards compatible to clients running on 15, and vice versa, RMT accepts clients of the 12 variety. We also have a set of open APIs that are used by SUSE Manager, so in a sense we are also developing part of SUSE Manager in the SUSE Customer Center. And of course our APIs are open, so everyone can use them. So we have a lot of third-party software out there that uses our APIs that we don't even know about exactly who is using it how. So that's also something we support. And so we have to version all these APIs and document them. So that's also what we do. As you can see, really the web UI is just the tip of the iceberg, and basically we own, maintain the entire update stack for all the products that we have. I might add to that mostly RPM-based products at the moment, so there's a gap at the moment, you might realize, regarding container images, which we don't fully handle yet, but we come to that when we come to the roadmap. So that's it. Basically, that's why SUSE Customer Center is, for us, really a product. We have a full DevOps and Scrum team with a team lead, UI UX expert, a product owner, Scrum Master, 8 developers, I think, 7, 8, something. It depends on how you count. Myself, as a product manager. We have a full CI/CD pipeline in place, so we can publish to production a couple of dozen times a day if required. We have all tests automated. We come to that as well later in the talk, when you talk about the last 18 months, where that came in handy. So we basically do everything that our customers also have to do every day as part of the development cycle here.
Can you go back to is it correctly understood that you can't connect the system directly to SUSE customers and you need to do?
Oh no, that is a mistake. There's also a direct connection. I don't know why this is missing from the slide.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a direct connection for 15 to SCC.
But there is actually. So that was on there. I don't know how this got lost. So there. It can directly connect to SUSE Customer Center. So that would be really insane if you had to install a RMT somewhere.
I don't know.
So okay, well, usually it wouldn't also hurt because it's, well, we come to that in a second. It's also pretty it uses a lot less resources than SMT, so it's really straightforward. It's a lot faster than SMT. So, but usually if you only have one system, it doesn't require an additional RMT. You can, of course, connect directly to SCC. Okay, I'll give you a quick overview of the functionality, and this is now more or less focused on the web UI you're seeing. So one thing you can do is you can manage your organizations and the users that are part of that organization. That means if you're an administrator of the organization, you can add users or invite users to that organization, and you can grant them support access and admin access. Admin access basically means you can invite users, you can grant support access, stuff like that. So that's basically the admin part. And support access means for all the subscriptions that you have, you can open, that come with support entitlements, you can open and review support requests. So then another thing that you can do with your organization is there's a set of mirroring or organization credentials for each organization, and you can use this on the proxies to just access everything that you're entitled to and mirror it. So that's so you don't have to have all the registration codes for everything ready. You just use the mirroring credentials, and it knows everything that it just allows you to pull everything that you have a registration for subscription. So that's the organization credentials part. The core basically is the subscription management part. So you get an overview of all the subscriptions you have with, well, the most important data is usually the expiry date. So we also have warnings on the dashboard if something's about to expire or already expired. You can see the registration code that you need on the client side to register a system. And you see how many systems, physical or virtual, you are entitled to register and how many you currently have registered there. So you can have an overview if you potentially overuse. We see that sometimes, we see that when we come to the systems later, that sometimes there are some stale systems because they are no longer in use, but they were never removed from SEC, so that if you see a warning that you might be overusing, that does not necessarily mean you're non-compliant. It just means make sure that there are some systems that you might have to clean out of SEC. So the subscription information allows you, for example, also to download the ISOs, to subscribe to patch notifications if you you get an overview of everything that you're entitled to, because usually if you have a subscription, it entitles you to a couple of product versions, and you get an overview here. And if you bought from us, you also have an order history here that basically tells you when you bought something and what the order number was, if you have to reference that. System management gives you an overview of all the systems you have registered, host name, architecture, when this system last got in contact with SEC, when it was registered. So this is also the place where you can deregister systems if once they're stale and no longer in use, and then use the subscription somewhere else because we just count there, basically. You can also download the list of systems that are registered as a CSV. And you have information whether it's connected through a registration proxy or directly, or whether it's a registration proxy. Which brings me conveniently to the next point. You can manage all your proxies, get an overview of all the proxies that are registered in SEC with a basic information when this was registered, how many systems are behind that, and again, of course, can manage your mirroring credentials here. That was basically the maintenance part, where how do you get your patches and updates. But there's also a support part, which has basically two major screens. One is the open or closed so existing tickets screen, where you can get an overview of the status of all the tickets there. Who opened it? So if you have multiple users in the organization, you can also see all the tickets of that organization that were opened by colleagues, maybe. And of course, you can open a new ticket, and we will guide you through the process. So we will ask for the account you want to open this on, the product that is required, the entitlement behind. So if you have, for example, a regular or a premium subscription for the same product, then of course we're going to ask you this as well. And you can upload attachments, everything, manage this through this interface. Any questions so far? Okay, then let's look at the last like 18 months roughly. We have 3 highlights that I want to discuss in a bit more detail. The one is SUSE Linux Enterprise 15 and the upcoming SP1 basically. So some of the things I'm going to tell you are not for relating to GA, but going to be available in 3 months roughly when SP1 comes out. We're going to talk about the SUSE separation. As you heard, we're now independent, so no longer owned by Micro Focus, but by EQT. And that affected the SUSE Customer Center in a way. It was roughly the same size of project as Linux Enterprise 15. So we come to that in a second, what was that behind that. And we had a little, well, we were the first one to get the UI redesign that you now see in all the products, basically. So the color scheme and everything. So I'll talk about that a bit, because some specialties regarding SEC also here to consider. So what happened with SUSE Linux Enterprise 15? One major change with respect to 12 was that 15 is much more modular than 12 was. So you could say in 15 everything now is a module, even the base system become a module. So this before that there was a base product and then modules on top of it. So you didn't have to worry about anything in the base product regarding modules. You could use that as standalone without anything on top. So what we had to implement for this is we had to do the entire dependency resolution on a module level. We implemented a package search because now it could easily happen that you were looking for something that is not in a module that you already activated or registered. So we had to have a package search. So we developed the API for that is used on the client side to resolve that. And we had to cover all the migration scenarios, and there were a couple. And if you imagine that all the modules get reshuffled and packages reassigned, we have to handle all that as well. No matter from which version you're coming, if you're going to 15, we have to make sure that the system continues to work as before, more or less, as far as possible. And that was also something we were very involved in. So while we were implementing the package search, we thought, well, now we have the API. Why don't we put a small little UI on top of that and make it usable in the SUSE Customer Center as well? So that's basically the result. And that is something we are currently actively working on, adding a couple of functions that we got through feedback that would be nice to have on top of what we already had. You can basically select the base product, version, architecture, and then search for packages by name. You can search in all modules or in a specific module, and it will give you the list of the packages. So you can, for example, see that if you don't restrict yourself here for 15, SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 15, there are 33,565 packages. So that's quite a lot. But to be honest, it also contains the package hub, so basically everything that's so if you're a bit, well, you see that here, package hub. So there's a lot of stuff in here, obviously, but it helps you find your packages in a more convenient way. And you already see that that's something we recently added. You can now download the full list. We're going to add licensing information and so on. So there are some improvements here.
Can you download the packages from here?
You can that's also something we're adding now, because one of the functionalities I left out was the patch finder. That's something where you can find patches based on CVEs or whatever. So roughly similar interface, and that already has the functionality. If you have a subscription for the product that's affected, you can automatically download. And we're adding the same functionality here as well, so you can directly then download that.
So within this interface, can you also see other information like change logs or descriptions?
We're adding this now. So there was, from legal, there was the request to have a list of all the packages together with their license information, for example, and we're going to link to pages that list all the metadata, basically, change logs and everything. So that's the plan. And I think that as we speak, the description and license information might already be there. I'm not sure exactly about the setup because I left last week, of course, and haven't had a look in more detail this week, so it might already be there. So, but that's something we're working on, and we can already look a bit ahead, where I think we're going to integrate this package search and the patch finder, because they are so similar in functionality and they cover basically the same scope, and also the output is very similar, so just to have one interface there, basically, to make it easier to use depending on all your use cases. One major thing we did, you notice that there on the architecture slide there were two different kinds of proxies. There was SMT and there was RMT. So in 15 we replaced SMT with RMT, and as the name implies, our repository mirroring tool, we're focusing on the repository mirroring part. So the SMT, so the subscription management tool, try to do a lot of other things on top that really SUSE Manager is better suited to do. So we really created something that better fit the requirement really to do one thing and do it right. So that's the repository mirroring use case. We had three major things or four basically in mind. The one is we wanted to make it easier to use than SMT was. And so we added, for example, with SP1, we're going to add auto-completion to the very sophisticated auto-completion, I might add, to the CLI. We wanted to improve the performance, we wanted to reduce the footprint. We had another, more internal goal, and that was to increase the maintainability, because that's something that's important for you looking forward. The software, if you think that SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 11 is going to be around for a couple of more years, maybe until close to 2030 maybe, depending on, there might be customers using it that long. So the lifetime of 12 will be even longer. Then it's important to be future-proof, and that's something we try to achieve here. On the other side, it was important for us to also support SUSE Linux Enterprise 12, and the other way around, to have SMT support 15. And we had to have an upgrade path from SMT to RMT so that it could basically use the same configuration database and just migrate that to RMT. We added a couple of more things for air-gapped solutions or offline, but that's our very specialized use cases. So. And that, of course, was quite a project in itself. And turned out pretty well. We have, as an example, how good RMT really is, we have a performance, and I can show you a couple of charts in a second. So RMT is much faster than SMT. It's actually 3 times faster. It can register 3 times faster, and it mirrors everything 3 times faster. And of course, it has used only a fraction of the resources. So here you can see the difference. On the left-hand side, you have SMT. This is the CPU utilization. And you can see RMT, it hardly uses any CPU. And the same for memory footprint. So you see this SMT memory footprint. The blue line here, that's always repositories, activations that happen. And that's the memory footprint here, and well, hardly noticeable on the RMT side. So that's one of the goals we actually achieved pretty well. And it's also 3 times faster. And I think we also did a good job on the usability side of things, and so basically it turned out pretty well, I'd say. So that's it for the /15 part, unless there are questions regarding this. You can go to the SUSE Separation. So as of March 15, that reads the announcement, the press announcement is SUSE today announced the creation of the largest independent open source company following the completion of SUSE acquisition by growth investor AQT from Micro Focus. Well, it's not really true that we are now the largest independent open source company. We are going to be once the deal between IBM and Red Hat is complete, but you have to be precise there. So they are still, that's not complete yet. And this separation means that the entire backend that we are using for support, for order processing, financial, for fulfillment, all that had to be separated logically and physically. And that happened behind the scenes. And well, that's one of the instances where our goal is, and that's why this is maybe my favorite slide in this whole deck, because I can brag about something that we usually do not talk about, or where we try to get as little visibility as possible. So our goal here was nobody should notice that this was going on, or notice as little as possible. So one of our goals was 0 downtime for this, and we achieved that. So yeah, we have CI/CD and everything worked out fine. And the only place, and if we had our way, even that wouldn't be visible in SCC. The only noticeable change for customers is that the site IDs of their organizations changed. So you got a new site ID, the sites got separated. There's a Micro Focus part and the SUSE part. The SUSE part got a new ID. Of course, your mirroring credentials changed behind the scenes. Nobody noticed. Everything just kept working. Support was accessible. All your entitlements were migrated to the new sites and everything behind the scenes. So that's what we're really proud of, and that was, from the scope of this, was roughly the same as for SLE 15. And that's why I'm really proud that it was so silent, and really, well, of course there were some minor hiccups along the way, but nothing that really made any major waves. So that's what I'm really proud of, and this is the one time I can talk about this in some detail. So there was one more noticeable thing in this case, so not a feat like that one before, but a feature. We added a new design, basically the UI redesign. We were the spearhead for that, so all the icon set, color scheme, the interaction, we were the test bed for that. We did something on top of that. We revamped our content area, and we're going to keep revamping this. So basically, the next thing we're going to do here is the dashboard. That's going to be overhauled. And we added something on the right-hand side of the screen. That's a little slider. It says customer feedback. And that is specifically if you want to give us feedback about SCC. It's not about, well, if you have questions regarding products or anything, we're also going to dispatch this to whoever might be concerned, but it's really to give us feedback about things you might want to see in SCC any changes that are interesting to you. So that's something we added. I think it's not in the other products. So far for looking ahead, for looking behind. Now looking ahead. So we have, as I mentioned already, so far the SUSE Customer Center handles all the SUSE, for the most part handles all the SUSE products that are RPM based. There are some new products or some products that also are available now as container images, or that we want to make available as container images. So we have one mission for the next 12 to 18 months as far as especially user interface is concerned. So make containers first-class citizens. That's something that's going on in SUSE as a whole, but of course in the microcosmos of SUSE Customer Center, that's also something we're going to drive forward. So in concrete step, that means we already have currently in beta state a SUSE container registry online where you can pull at least the base containers. Containers as a service platform and cloud application platform. This is already available, at least in beta, but it doesn't have a UI yet, so you cannot browse the catalog or something. So that's the first thing we're going to do. We are going to add a catalog to that. For that, we need to add, of course, all the metadata for you to know what's in the containers, description, installation instruction, source, links to sources and packages. That's also a GPL requirement. We need to provide that. Licensing information, version information, and of course some basic search functionality. So that's going to be the first step. Some minimal viable product, if you like. And we're going to, in a next step, in a second step, we're going to really integrate this into SCC. We're going to, the definition of product is going to change quite a bit, because it's then also going to entail container-based products. Some of the advanced tools, package search, patch finder, these also have to work with containers because currently they're going to point you to RPM-based products. And we might have to need to add authentication authorization, that might not really be required. So the idea currently is to have all the containers available to you without the need to register, so just being able to pull them. So that's, at least for the scope we're currently looking at, that seems to be something we don't need as integrated.
So in the previous slide when you were talking about the integrating the container catalog stuff and source and such packages, does that include like the source description that actually produced the container?
Yes.
Like the Docker file,
Yes.
the description or whatever?
It has to.
Okay.
According to GPL, we have to, and if we make it available without registration even, then also the sources must be available without registration. That's currently not the case, so if you want to access the source, because all our products are usually require, at least the updates, usually require you to be registered, and so the sources are also only available once you log in, basically. But that's something we're going to change. Okay, so cool. for containers, we have to. So there's no way around it, and we also want to do this. We want to keep the threshold as low as possible here. So that's.
Do we plan to allow third-party containers? Do we have a plan to have a registry to allow third-party?
So I think the idea. Well, we are being in the discussion, or we're discussing this at the time. The most likely scenario, from my perspective, is that we have a clone of our registry, because behind the scenes, we're also signing all the containers, of course, and that's something we cannot do with third-party containers, really, because that's part of the build process. Otherwise, we would have to build third-party containers. Would be possible, but that would be more complex than creating a clone.
So what about like, so there's this package hub thing that they've been trying. So what about something equivalent for containers, where they get built service and then they get pulled in?
Yeah, that's a plan basically. So we're going to basically extend this to containers as well. That's really the plan. But third party most likely is a clone. So a second registry specific for third parties. Maybe even a marketplace around that.
Well, the thing about the packages, the software in there is SUSE certified. And I would assume a third-party software wouldn't necessarily be like less certified.
Yeah, so there is also already, I think there's also a difference between the real SLES content and the package hub. There are different keys being used to sign that, if I'm not mistaken.
So package hub currently works by the package hub repo package is signed by SUSE, and then the package hub packages are signed by a secondary SUSE key for package hub, and then there's a cross-trust that happens when you activate it. So for
That model could be roughly the same, but that would require us to build the containers.
well, so that's
But
what I was
it's possible,
looking for
yeah.
something like package hub for containers. The community
So,
could also
yeah.
offer something like that
Yeah.
as well.
So we're having that kind of discussion, but we're not decided yet because if it comes to that, there's going to be some organizational overhead, and we're just not sure where we're going to have that. And maybe it's not even easier to have a clone. Maybe that's even more effort because you have to have the monitoring twice and what the account setup and so on. So that maybe it's really easier to have it in one place, and
I mean, just
we have
from
to.
my perspective, I
Yeah.
like to build stuff as a community member
Mhm.
for people to use with Sleep, the same way I do for packages. I'd like to offer containers that
Yeah.
people can use with it.
So that the discussion is not yet final. So we first have to get that basic stuff done, but we're looking into it. So but that's nothing for the next 12 months. But after that, I think to be decided. So as I said, we have these functional stages basically. So the basic functionality and the integration part, and we also have a staged introduction regarding the content that we're going to deliver. So the first step that we're going to focus on is SUSE Linux Enterprise base and derived containers. So something with, for example, a MariaDB or something like that as a container. That's going to be the first step. Next step will be basically SUSE Container as a Service Platform and SUSE Cloud Application Platform in one go, most likely together. And then we're going to look into other containerized products. One would be SUSE Enterprise Storage. That's also the part where we're not yet settled on authentication authorization. For the others, we're not going to have the requirement for you to log in to get it. Might be the same for SUSE Enterprise Storage, for example, or OpenStack. So that's the one major thing on our roadmap for the next 12 months. There are some minor improvements that we're going to do, some of which we're already kind of visible. Package search, we added the CSV download. We're going to add the additional information that we aren't linked to that. We allow the direct download. We're going to look into Patch Finder and most likely integrate the two. Maybe wait with that till we have to add the container part, the container images part anyhow. So we do this in one go maybe. And then we have various dashboard improvements. One thing we always hear is that customers want to see an overview of their purchase history, for example, in the dashboard. That's, of course, something that we're now in a better position to provide. Now the back-end systems has been separated, and we have a little more room to maneuver there. So that's, some of the minor things on the roadmap. There are, of course, some things that, again, we are trying to keep as non-intrusive as possible, so also nothing to put on the roadmap here, but there's also more going on here. So we come to the, unless there are questions, we can now come to the questions. Feedback, suggestions.
On the slide where you showed all the SNT, the RT, the versions supported,
Yeah.
happens. It's usually
So-
the business can't get off yet. With the RMT, so the RMT is not going to support SUSE 11,
Yeah, that's true.
but the SMT 12
Yes,
will support 15. Now, at least according to that.
yes. Yeah, SMT 12 supports basically everything that we have.
Okay, and then, but that it's planned that SMT 12 will cover 15 through its entire life cycle?
Yes.
Okay, yeah,
So-
so we would end up stuck on SMT 12 for a while.
Yeah, that's also why we added support for 15, because you're not the only customer who might have a hard time letting, especially or moving away from SMT. There might be some limitations to the features we are going to add. So there might be some features we add to RMT that better support 15 that we are not going to add to 12. I have to make that statement, but you will never be in a position not to be able to register a 15 system.
Yeah, I mean the basics.
Just registration, getting updates, mirroring stuff, that will always work. We might have some things that make life easier if you, for example, just activating all the modules that are available in one go. That might be a feature that we added this, but we added this to both. But we might have made a decision just to do it with RMT.
RMT might have one command, and unfortunately SMT 12 got a manually.
Yes, exactly. But there's nothing you're not going to be able to do with SMT12 regarding 15 systems. So there's going to be basic support, and some of the advanced features that we're going to, or the bulk features, for example, that's going to be something exclusively for RMT, maybe, going forward. We are not yet at the stage where we do not look at feature parity, but that might happen in the future, especially once we get closer to the LTSS phase.
I'd just like to let you know that we've been running our SMT server now for close to 8 years, and it hasn't been updated in 5 years, and it's working just fine. And we don't want to update it because it's working. But for what we need it to do as a mirror, it's working just fine.
Okay.
So I encourage you to test the mirroring functionality with older versions, not just people who update to their SMT server with the latest version. Right, the software is not the client software that we have on our side. Right?
Yeah.
We have an SMT
Yeah.
that mirrors your.
Is it 11, or is this 12?
Well, it started off as, I think it's probably 11, because we haven't touched it in
Yeah.
really 5 years ago. There was when I think it was with attachment. At some point, you upgraded, and we were forced to upgrade our SMT server.
Okay, so yeah, then it's still 11.
And it's still running /11.
So
SP3 on.
just with 11 SP3. Okay, so you're aware that 11, also SP4, is now out of general support. So SMT 11 is a separate. That was still a time where SMT was a
Mirror SMT12. We're using it just as a software repository.
okay.
We're not doing subscription APIs.
Oh yeah, okay.
Registration. We're
Yeah,
just
yeah,
mirroring.
yeah. And the question,
I just want you to be aware that you have customers who are using these.
we are very aware of that. So I can I can maybe add a little. You maybe see that there are here from 11 and SMT 11. There are actually 2 arrows going up to SCC, because logically, especially the 11 version and default SMT 11, they are still talking to something that is really not SUSE Customer itself, but Novell Customer Center behind the scenes. That happened. So there's logically all the information that goes into Novell Customer Center still ends up in SUSE Customer Center. So it's just another interface and another server that you're contacting, and that might change, or this is 99% sure it's going to change in the next 12 months as well. So we're not exactly sure what to do, whether to backport SUSE Connect to 11 or add the NCC interface to SCC, but there's going to be a change there as well.
I don't
But again, we have to try to make it as non-intrusive, as non-interruptive as possible. And I think we're going to succeed at that as well. So we are not going to do anything that breaks stuff on the customer side here. So, yeah. So we're very aware that there are customers also using maybe even older versions, both of SMT 11 and /11.
So it's not on there, but I'm going to ask since we're talking about old stuff. SMT 12, could you hope, is 10 repositories manageable with SMT 12?
10.
/10.
/10. With 11, they managed it. With
SMT 12.
no, not with SMT 12. So that was something we cut, a link we cut.
But the SMT 11 does have the package for 15. Yes, it does.
So yes, the following is true. The following is true. If you can configure your SMT 11 to not talk to NCC but to SCC instead, so it already has the server-facing API, and then you can of course also mirror the 15 clients repositories. That's also possible. So, but and it works, but you might not want to do that necessarily. So you can stretch it to some point, but
Because that taffy will eventually snap.
at some point, yeah. Yeah, well, so it's designed to work, but it's not a supported scenario. Let's put it like that. So not something. Yeah.
Question, if you are use RMT and we do patch, how many clients can handle with one RMT?
How many with RMT? With one RMT? So we're that's a couple of thousands at least, so tens of thousands, because we're at the CSPs and the cloud service providers. We have one RMT basically per region, and that handles usually, I think, even hundreds of thousands of clients, one RMT server.
We do patch with 2,000 servers in parallel,
2,000 servers?
in one batch. Can you handle 2,000 in one batch?
This
So that's 2,000 connections in parallel?
Yeah, in parallel 2,000. We got 600 servers patch.
So here we had, so what you see here is what happens if you do this for 2,000 in parallel. So we have these scenarios, yeah. That should work.
Problem is we see it's I/O bound, I/O actually, it cannot provide that throughput.
So it actually takes, in this scenario for 2,000, it took 3 minutes, 30 seconds.
This is performance on your side?
It's performant on the RMT side, yeah.
RMT server side. Okay.
So the network might have an issue. So in this case, this was actually recorded at a CSP site. So they have the bandwidth to manage that.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, at 2,000 parallel connections and lots of downloads,
Yes.
you were saturating the
And so, and we only took, well, it was at 1.5 gig memory, and
That's pretty impressive.
so we're pretty proud of that as well.
Pretty good work. Yeah.
So, yeah, it should be, so the RMT itself should be able to handle that, because that's exactly the load we see here, 2,000 connections. But depends on more than just the RMT itself. The hardware configuration also has to support this network.
So if we upgrade it from our SMT 11 to SMT 12, it's just a software change. Our existing mirror,
Yeah,
we wouldn't have to re-mirror everything all over again.
I don't think so. So even for 15, you should be able to reuse the mirror if you move to 15.
I think I remember there was something, it does a data migration of the SMB data.
Yeah, it does some data migration, but the clients don't have to register. The one thing that might happen on the client side is you might have to accept a client certificate again.
Oh, yeah, 'cause
something
that will change.
that will change. But other than that, should be transparent. So, and we have extensive documentation of the process.
Well, I have his.
All right.
Go ahead.
One more thing, even test data is based on virtual machine or based on the physical server?
These were virtual machines.
Those are virtual machines.
These are 2,000 virtual machines. Yeah.
So the link was way more saturated than it appears.
Yeah.
I would like to be able to subscribe to the SUSE security email list. Can I do that through the customer center?
I don't think so. I'm not aware that we have that anywhere.
I'd like to
Maybe
offer
through.
that to you as a
Yeah.
suggestion.
Yeah. So we are.
Yeah,
Sure.
for the mailing list.
The mailing
Yeah.
list, yeah. 'Cause I have other people I need to add.
So
to
you
that.
can subscribe to the patch finder notifications that also include security. It's not, but it's not security specific. So yeah,
That'd be really good.
okay. Take that.
So just with regards to the container thing that we were talking about earlier, I'm just going to register the interest in the idea of that a container equivalent to Package Hub.
Yeah.
And that means like having an OBS project somewhere that community members can submit and build stuff for.
That-
Because that will make
yeah.
it easier to build up
Yeah.
that
So
stuff.
that's a request not only coming from the community but also from partners, of course. So yeah.
I'm both.
So IHVs and IS. So yeah, from other partners as well.
Yeah.
Alliance partners and.
Because I provide a few, to put it lightly, packages in Package Hub, and I've had requests from people asking about could I provide some of the software as containers, and I'd like it to be SLE-based, and I have to say no because I don't know how to do that.
So you should get in touch with me as well. So you also have my email on the front slide. So
I did not get your email on the front side, but I guess I'll.
the slides will be available as well on. So can.
You're bland.
Right.
That works too.
Right. Yeah. So you'll find me. Also, if all else fails, the feedback button on SEC and opens up an email client with something, email address pre-filled. You can get in touch with us. So, thank you for your attention, for your time.